when you finally understand what toil and toll budgets are. So now that you understand the concept behind a site reliability engineer and SLIs, SLOs, and SLAs, let's take a look at toil. But first, of course, if you've not watched those videos, do that first. SLOs and error budgets are leveraged by your organization to embrace DevSecOps and balance stability and velocity of new features. That balance will make or break your team's future and its ability to compete. So let's take a deep dive at toil and why it is essential to measure it and automate it away. First, maybe we should agree on what toil is and is not. Toil is not work that every office employee has to do, such as email, expense reports, travel, attending meetings, etc. That's not toil. While it's still important to avoid useless meetings, toil is really focused on the work that is related to running your production systems, the work that is often manual, automatable, repetitive, devoid of long-term value, but it's also work that scales linearly and will create tremendous bottlenecks in your organization if you don't automate it away. Effectively, every time an operator has to touch a production system or get involved, this should count as toil time. This includes potentially running scripts manually that do most of the work too. Ideally, those scripts should be fully end-to-end automated. Now, there's a debate about how often does work has to happen to be considered toil. Is doing something once or twice enough? More than twice? Well, many would argue that it might not be worth automating something that only happens once or twice, but my principles stand behind ruthless automation. So anytime you even wonder if you should automate something, that probably means you should. The second time something manual happens is certainly enough for me to justify automation. Of course, you would prioritize total automation by looking at the most time-consuming manual work first. But the more maturity and the more experience your teams have, the more you will automate mundane, small toil time. Let's be clear, work that is performed to automate toil is not counted as toil time because it wouldn't fit the definition of toil. That is useful work that reduces your long-term chance of facing the same time wasted again. So how do we exactly measure toil so that we can prioritize our automation work? So we need to measure toil. The first piece is to subscribe to the toil definition and clearly separate toil and automation work. Then you need to find the easiest way to track your on-call time and manual repetitive work. Each employee must have a way to capture that time spent and wasted. Ideally, you will use some kind of open source or commercial tool to collect that information and the time spent on that kind of work. You will ask every member of the team to track their total time and give them proper training and insight to share automation capabilities across teams. Don't let different teams reinvent the wheels in vacuums. You want to make sure that if one team has automated something, they are sharing it with the rest of the team so they don't build the same automation twice. Last point, having multiple teams or team member implement different automation scripts for the same problems should be seen as inefficient and therefore meeting the toil definition. So don't be fooled. If you're automating the same things multiple times with different members, you are creating and still meeting the definition of toil. While the goal is to eliminate toil entirely, it is often not practical or achievable due to small repetitive work that just happens randomly sometimes. At least until we have some sentient AI capability that will be able to solve all these problems for us automatically, you're going to have to face that, and that's okay. Then that's usually part of what you have to deal with. Ideally, you do not want your total time per person to be more than 50% of their time. The other 50% should be focused on eliminating toils and productive, meaningful work. Many teams are worried that by automating their toil away, they will put themselves out of a job. But the reality is that the more a team and company grows, the more effective it becomes, the more innovative it becomes, and the more automation is required, and problems change and vary. And so they find that it is an endless maturity principle, that they will never end up automating everything because you're going to have new things to automate. And their job, on the contrary, is safe, but also more fun, as they get to find new problems to solve instead of doing repetitive, manual, boring work. It's very important to ensure that teams share all these best practices across teams widely. So have collaboration tools and chat an environment for them to share and communicate and be able to discuss issues and how they were able to fix them. There you have it. Let's make sure your team properly understands toil, you measure it, implement ruthless automation so that no more than 50% of their time can be spent on toil time, but instead on productive work to optimize and accelerate your growth and scale.